Here with Liz and Haley. Liz is going to give us a little background on the horse.
Haley is a 20-year-old thoroughbred. She's used as a school horse. She jumps around, does the cross rails, and 2-foot.
Alrighty. So we're going to watch this horse move. I'm going to get myself in a position that I can best see it. As you can tell, it's snowing, so we don't always have perfect conditions when we're shooting horses, but we're going to use that to our advantage. So what I'm looking for right now is just how the foot's landing, front and back. Is it toe first flat, slightly heel first, all four corners? If there's any kind of abnormal pivoting or rotation of the hocks or the foot. And like I said, it's not perfect conditions, but we can take advantage of this. As I'm gonna scoot over here, I'm gonna use the snow prints to now start seeing the stride length. So usually when I look at the stride length, I'm letting the horse pass by, and I'm looking for the hinds to at least get into the tracks of the front. As you can clearly see by these tracks, that the stride length is pretty good, and the stride length was even from front to back. All right. Watching them in the turns as well, if they're having a hard time, difficulty turning, or they can just turn right into it. And now we're watching at the trot, see if we notice a head bob or anything like that. The trot's the gait that you can usually see a lameness the most. Thank you. In the stall here, and what we're just looking at is the basic conformation. Just looking at some things, I don't see anything that would identify a club foot or a negative plane foot. Seems to be basically a normal foot. There's no interruptions or peaks and valley in the coronary band, no wire cuts. It's not overly flaring at any position. So we're just going to pull this foot forward, bust clinches, and get to work here. And as you can see, with a straight edge along it, the flaring is a little bit, there seems to be a little bit more flaring to this side on the lateral side. So we'll look at that. Just 2 nails on this time. And I just pop the nails back out on clip shears. So, first I'm just going to pick out the foot and clean it up. I'm not trimming right now, so we're still in the evaluation process. We're going to see, so we're trying to identify as much tissue as we can, and we're going to discuss it, and we're using this protocol as a check and balance system so we know with confidence was there tissue to be touched or not. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to mark the dimple in the back of central sulcus. You can clearly see the V just in front of it, about a pin width. You can see where the frog and heel tissue and the flat spot of the buttress is. So we're going to make a line back there. That's representing our dimple. So we're going to start now with our distortions. Is there length to the tissue and capsule to start with? So we'll start off with our central sulcus. It's rounded, it has a bottom, and there's really no tissues to speak of to have to tags or anything to be removed. So that's basically a 0. So we're going to double check our central sulcus length with what's there, with the widest part of our foot down into the commissures with our dividers. There to there. Oops. Let's do that again. There to there. There to there. So just beyond. So the frog apex is sitting at a 1. The frog width is not quite, it's not more than a 1/4 of an inch of robustness. So that would be sitting at a 1. Now that we've graded our frog, we know there's length. There are slight tags. You can see them lifting up. I am going to clean that up. I know there's length because I've graded my distortions, and I'm looking now specifically at the tissue and seeing that there are tags to be removed, exfoliating layers. So using that, I am going to go ahead and trim that but I've done my due diligence before that. And the reason I'm doing this is because now when we get to our estimated widest part of the foot, will actually be closer because we'll have a true identifying surface. Now, the reason I'm also going after my frog apex, and I'm clear to do that here, is it wasn't welded to the sole. So I'm still not having to touch any of the sole because I haven't done enough grading distortions to evaluate the sole yet if I'm clear and safe to remove my sole. So since this was not welded, I'm clear to remove that to its rounded tissue. Also, right back here, there's just a little tag through my frog buttress. Clean up these little tags so I can clearly see my hoof wall frog buttress. So now I just cleared up everything. I'm going to remark my dimple now that I can see those clearly. And I'm going to draw in my frog apex with a center mark just for later distortions. I'm going to recheck this. That was a 0. I didn't have to trim it. This still is a 0. My frog apex. Sorry. Get that right there. Frog apex is a 0. Frog width is now a 2 because I cleaned up those corners. Okay, now we're going on to heels, bars, toe. The last bearing surface of the heel. Last bearing surface of the heel. This is our 50. This is where it would represent. Beyond that would be a 3. Just behind that a 2. They're both sitting at about a 2. There's not enough curvature or difference between left and right to upgrade one to the other, so they would both be a 2. Now the bar, it's going to be the top of the bar. So if the bar's folded over, it would be the top of the hoof wall of the bar. This is still standing pretty straight up, so we're going to mark that, and we're going to mark that. Now at the widest arc and the widest arc of the bar, we're going to measure to see if there's a distortion. He wants his foot back, we'll let him have it. He's standing real good. She is. All right. So, being in line with your dart line, you're given a 1/2 inch before you start grading distortions. Another 1/4 inch is a 1, 1/4 inch is a 2. 1/2 inch, 1, not quite a 2 on this one. So this is a 1, this is a 2. Toe distortion. Now we have a verified frog apex. So we're going to mark our widest part of the foot based off of the frog from there to there. From there to there, that's your 50-50. Plus a 1/4 inch, that's at a 0. So we've gotten our distortions, and the distortions are how the hoof capsule and the tissue has migrated from its origin. Now we need to look at the ratios or the proportions of where the existing foot is and where it's working over. This horse was shod, so this is a flat surface. There's no rolled breakover in it. So when we're looking at the back half, the caudal aspect of the foot, we're going to look from the heel. And these heels were the same, so we can use either one. That's 1 3/4 inches from there to where the existing breakover is right now. That's 2 3/4. So there's an inch difference in proportion around the center of articulation of the joint. So there's a resistance of breakover here. So now we've done all of our evaluation. So there are distortions of the foot, mostly in the back half of the foot. We have evaluated that the foot is working with more mass in the front of center and less mass behind the center. So there is going to be tissue and length that's going to have to be corrected and pulled back. This is the part that most people skip, and this is very important. It's the sole depth assessment. Is there sole to remove? How much? And or is it better just to take the capsule? Now when we're looking, there's a lot of things you're looking at here. You're tying all this information together. First, we'll start back here where we had the greatest distortions. I'm going to look at the quality of the tissue. The tissue is chalky and flaky. There is depth to my commissures. Depth to my commissures. Now, as we start looking forward, that depth decreases right around the apex of the frog. However, it rises very high and has that chalky texture way around the perimeter. So I'm clear to start exfoliating in my seed of corn and at the very perimeter of the foot. I don't want to touch it in here because I really don't have the commissure depth to go along with it. And we know based off the earlier assessment that it's not a club foot and it's not a negative plane foot, that this frog plane makes sense with a normal foot, and that this frog plane is already kind of going right into this level of the sole. So I'm not going to want to touch pretty much anything in here. So now that I've assessed that, I can start preparing my exfoliation. Now I'm not trimming the hoof wall yet. I am preparing the foot as what the balance will be that I will then bring my capsule to. This is going to be my coffin bone medial lateral balance and my adequate protection underneath the foot. So I'm going to just give him a break. He's standing, or she's standing real good. So we want to always remember that the sole has two functions. One, it helps us establish medial lateral balance underneath the coffin bone. Two, it's there for protection of the coffin bone. So balance isn't just getting all the proportions right, it's also balancing between the functions of the tissue. So, and I was using my nippers there, but I shoe in southern Colorado and it's usually very dry here, and this has been an exceptionally dry year. But I'm using it much like a knife. I'm just rolling the tissue until it's just easily removable. I'm not cutting it, I'm just rolling it and using it like a knife. Instead of this being my thumb, it's the nipper that's rolling it across. Just getting that top layer off, so now I can take my knife, and what I'm looking for is the transition of the tissues. See that? Went waxy immediately. Nice. I went over in the quarters because I know I have the most depth there. So I'm going through the layers, chalky, 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 chalky. And I'm hitting wax right there. So now I'm going to start connecting these dots around. And again, staying towards the perimeter where I know I have a little bit of depth, trying to preserve underneath the coffin bone. So there we go. So now I'm just going to turn my knife upright, and I'm just trying to clear up my sole wall junction. And you notice too, as I brought down that foot, how I straightened out these bars as well. So now, again, I'm just doing the sole wall junction here. Now you can see the foot's on a plane, an even plane. I didn't touch any of this in here, so we've kept that depth right at the tip of the apex of the frog. And now I am assuming, because of the transition of the sole, that I am at the medial lateral balance of my foot. So now, I'll give him a break here. I'm going to map the foot. So, we've already got our apex. We've already got from the widest part. So I'm going to make my sole wall junction line around the foot. Termination of the bars, you can see where the lamina is changing. And the lamina is changing right in here. There's no more lamina, no more lamina. And you can see there's a swell in here. And you can, especially on this lateral side, you can see that widest arc of the sole is lined up with that. It's a little harder to see there. Now that I got my 3 points of contact there, 3 references I should say, I'm going to go ahead and establish that as my widest part of the foot. Sweet. There we go. All right. Situate. There you go. All right. You notice I'm not fighting the horse. I mean, this is a process, and this horse needs to be willing to work with me through the entire process. So, from my widest part of the foot, 1 3/4 inches, is the tip of the coffin bone. 1/4 inch past that, 2 inches is an appropriate place to establish a breakover. As I now create my breakover line and I draw on my pillars. Now the pillars are representing the terminal papillae underneath the coffin bone. That's actually the strongest point of the foot. it has the most density. In a natural environment, that's where the foot would wear to. It would reduce the hoof wall to that point, and that would act as like a wear plate that the capsule could balance around. So now that I got the foot map, I'm getting real close to now bringing the capsule down to my map. But before I do that, I need to verify if this map makes sense. So I'm going to do my projected ratios. What that means is if I was to be able to get the working surfaces back to my dimple, to my widest part of the foot, and from there forward, would I fall within that 50-50 ratio? And as you can see here, I clearly do. So that means that the map makes sense. If I shoe to according to that, I will be working around the center of rotation correctly. So I can now proceed to my bringing down my hoof capsule and balancing it around the preparation. So the map now doesn't necessarily represent where to go. It now represents where to stop. I've trimmed this, keeping in mind the medial lateral balance and the protection, so I do not want to invade this anymore, especially now that I've established it makes sense. If it was out of ratio, I can now, if it was, let's say, the 50-50 ended here, and I was beyond, at that time I could go back and start investigating if I could find a chalky line or something that maybe wasn't previously there. But once you've established you are within the 50-50, in a certification process, you definitely want to stop, because you are saying, this is the balance of the foot I'm going to bring it to. And we're going to assess if you did bring it to that based off of your map. So this map needs to stay through the rest of the trimming process. All right. So there's not much, and with that in mind, I'm going to kind of keep some height of my nippers. So I had more distortion in the back of the foot than in the front, and that's why I started my nipper run in the back, giving me plenty of room to bring my capsule to. I'm just doing the bulk of the work with my nippers. The fine work is with my rasp. Okay. So now, I'm going to establish my heels. To close to a zero position. Now I'm going to start bringing down my hoof wall as flat as possible so it can accept the shoe. And you can already see how the symmetry of the foot, now that I'm bringing it back close to that level of sole, has come back into play here. Just by bringing off the length. Okay. So, because I'm only shoeing one foot for this demonstration, I'm going to go select a shoe and start getting that hot. This is a little bit out of order of what I would normally do. But, for the purposes of this, so we're going to go up. So we're going to look at what we're looking at to determine if we shoe size what we want. Well, first, we want to be able to put breakover on breakover. And on this shoe, breakover is just in front of the second toenail. When we do that, will we reach back to our dimple, or at least cover our heel buttress? In this case, we would not be able to. In this case, we're not quite there yet, but as you can tell, there's narrowing of the branch because that shape is not the same. There's straightening of this branch that's actually going to give us length that is then going to be able to reach back to our dimple, keeping breakover on breakover. If we can get back to our dimple, we know our ratios work out because we did our projected ratios. So that's the shoe. So I'm going to put that to forward real quick. And it's snowing, but you know, sometimes you don't get the best weather. So now we're at the point of dressing the foot. So because I have now brought the capsule close to the level of the sole, I need to be very cautious about how I approach this. Now, if the foot would have had a lot of flare and not much depth, I actually would have dressed before I would have trimmed down. And that would have left me room once I flip the foot back over to bring it back down to my map without over exfoliating. But since I already brought it close to my map, I need to set guide so I don't, again, over invade and get into my map. So I'm just looking for uniform hoof wall thickness around the white line area. So the inside of the white line sole wall junction. So this seems to be non-distorted, gets more distorted as we go around here, especially on this lateral toe quarter. So this is where I'm going to do most of my gathering up. And I'm making a mark up here, a chamfer or a bevel, if you will. So when I pull the foot forward, I can see where I'm at. So that's my bevel. I'm going to now bring the foot forward, and understanding that hoof wall distorts furthest from its origin, furthest from the origin of the hoof wall. This is the origin of the coronary band, so furthest away is down here. I'm going to address that first. So I am looking at the bevel, and as you can see, I'm kind of shallow here. I'm just full out here. So with a very upright rasp stroke, I'm going to come down and meet that bevel. And I've pretty much done it there. So for functionality, that's all the further in this quarter I need to dress for functionality. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Oops. Do the same thing on this side. Very vertical with my rasp because I'm wanting to get the distortion out. Now I remember as I was coming around the toe, I remember that I had more flare on this side than this side. As you can notice, the rasp is picking up pretty much everywhere on this side. So that gets me functionally all I need for dressing. Now I can clean it up very light just to put a polish on it, not really removing hoof wall for aesthetic purposes. But functionally I've already dressed it. Kind of just round those edges so they stay tight. So while my shoe is still getting hot, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to regrade my distortions. Everybody knows it's important to reevaluate your work. And we do that almost every time we come up to a horse, but that's 6 to 8 weeks. How many times are you really evaluating your work? Step up. 6 to 8 seconds after you've trimmed it. So let's make sure we did what we intended to do. So, final heel, both within a quarter of an inch of the nipple. And if you look at, there's substantial bearing surfaces on both one. And if you look at, let's get a marker that can draw on here. And if you look at the shape of both triangles, they're very similar in shape. Meaning that back here, the coffin bone doesn't exist. So in the heel buttress itself, you're looking at the position and orientation to this dimple line, and you're looking at the curvature of the heels. Both being very similar, meaning that because it's not under the coffin bone, it has the ability to flex and give more. So curvature and position guide you more at this point. So those are both at a 0. Remember, we already regraded the frog previously, 0, 0, 2. Now we're going to go to the bars. We're given a 1/2 inch, 1, 1/2 inch, 1 to the outside of the bar. So that's improved, and as you can tell, they're very straight. Toe distortion is just beyond. So just at a 1. So everything's come back. Now that makes sense that we have a slight toe distortion because there's a little bit of sole beyond our 50-50. So we just have a slight toe distortion, but we're bringing the brake over, the functionality of the foot, back to here. So at this point, my shoe should be close to hot. And I just want to start remembering the process for shaping is going to be get your toe set right, the shape of the branches to your heels. And when we're evaluating the shoeing process, proportions are something that comes into your evaluation. And the proportions, the toe quarters under the center of the heels, should be achievable in most circumstances. There'd have to be a significant anomaly, such as a wire cut, a heel width distortion greater than a 3, some kind of extreme angular limb deformity. Those would create a situation where it's possible that your toe quarters and your heel won't line up. There was no such anomalies in that foot, so when I'm shaping it, I'm just remembering where my toe needs to be, what were the shape of the branches, and then I'm going to then bring my shoe together, remembering that, and it should be really close to ready to put on. I might only have to adjust it a little bit. So we're going to make sure everything's flat and level. And again, while I'm here, before I take it and I have the heat, I'm going to just check my toe quarter center of the heel, toe quarter center of the heel. So I should be close. I kind of straighten the branches out with the foot. Not to say I'm going to be perfect, but I should be close. The shape should be really close. So you can see I just got a little bit more curvature in this particular foot from about the widest part of the foot back. So I'm going to put that in real quick. But I was there, very close already. So one more round, one more trip to the anvil won't hurt us for time or efficiency. Okay. Just checking the level. That's going to be close enough that I'm going to punch this out and look at it on the foot where I can hold it and just kind of assess it a little closer. So as I'm coming up, I'm immediately going to start running my fingers, making sure there's no burrs. It's seated out. There's not going to be any sole pressure or anything like that. That's just something that you do in your everyday work that you still do in a certification. So my toe quarters fit flush. As I bring the foot forward, I'm just looking. It's just slightly outside. Just slightly outside. So I'm just going to close that up just a little bit more. More little tap and we should be ready to set that shoe. Right now I'm just providing a little box. Just providing a little bit of boxing for the foot. So other things I want to look for is make sure that my nail holes line up with my white line. That my shoe's going to be on straight. Break over on break over. Those are the things I'm looking at as I'm setting my shoe. And if you need to back it out, absolutely. Get your shoe where you shaped it. So we covered our heels, toe quarter, center heel, toe quarter, center of the heel. So our proportions there look good. The widest arc is at the widest arc, or the widest point of the foot. Okay. And we're gonna all right. So as we're looking, we're tight. We have a subtle graduation. No more than 3/16 of an inch through the heels. While we're here, we're going to do our final ratios. Final ratios, this is the foot functioning around the widest part of the foot like we said it was going to. So here and here, since we got to the dimple, we can use the dimple as our reference. 50-50, we're well beyond our breakover. So this foot is set to work around the functions. So now we just have to finish the foot. And I do want to make this clear. This is not me saying this is how this foot has to be shod and there's no room for improvement. This process is more about me explaining clearly what I am seeing in the foot and why I'm making the decisions I'm making. If you had seen something that you would have addressed a little differently than me, by all means, that does not mean you're wrong or you were right. It just means you're looking at things differently. Now, how you would evaluate that is a couple ways. You would go back through the protocol, the checks and balances. Are you working around the center of rotation correctly? Was the foot adequately protected? These kinds of things. Did you meet your balance parameters afterwards? And then finally, you would reevaluate the horse. Did he or she like what you did, walk off? All those things are factors, and we all are just at the level we're at. And there's plenty of people who are a lot better shoers than me that might have done this, seen a few things and done it differently. But I at least have a justification that I know is at least mostly beneficial for this horse. Is there areas for me to improve on? Absolutely. But that's what this process is. It's not just something we're making you do. It's something that we're doing and we can all grow from. Okay, so now we're here to determine if we did something for the horse or to the horse. This is our final check and balance. Does the horse appreciate it? Is he actually comfortable in what we did? So we're going to just assess them the same way. Easy turn. As you can tell, the hind tracks are in the front tracks and there's an even stride length there. All right, thank you.